Some of my favorite anime in the 90s and early 2000s was anime centered around cops. Those action comedies that typically have these two partners causing disasters and then coming back to an angry chief. And that's kind of what I was expecting getting into Police in a Pod, probably cutting out the whole action part of it. And that's definitely kind of what you get here. This is a 13-episode series that is airing in the Winter 22 anime season. This is my thoughts on the first 2 episodes, so let's jump into it. Police in a Pod opens up following a girl named Kawaii. And Kawaii is currently not liking her job being a police officer. And as she's ready to turn in her resignation to her boss, she ends up being assigned a new partner, Fuji. And Fuji's a very beautiful lady, and she apparently has been demoted from her position in the crime investigation department because she was bullying her co-eyes. So now with his new partner, Kawaii kind of just spends the day with Fuji and eventually decides at the end of the day, look, I can turn this in whenever I want. I'm gonna give it some time. Completely counter to the synopsis, which makes it believe that Kawaii just sees Fuji and goes, oh my gosh, she's gorgeous, I want to keep working here. It's actually just, she gets some entertainment and some fun out of working alongside Fuji. As we find out that Fuji is quite interesting. And what ends up coming from this is Kawaii working alongside Fuji, learning a little bit more about police work, as Fuji seems to be a lot more kind of stable, seemingly stable. Stable in her position as a police officer, not necessarily stable in the head as it kind of seems, but it really does seem like through Fuji, Kawaii is learning a little bit more about how to do her work, getting a lot more experience, although from a different angle, because again, Fuji is a little twisted in a lot of regards. But a lot of the storytelling really kind of centering around the fact that because Kawaii basically took this job because her father pushed her and to get into civil service, and this is the only job that she was able to get, she just hates being a police officer. Everybody hates police officers. Nobody likes police officers. Usually when you meet a police officer, it's in your worst moment, or you're doing something wrong and you got caught. Nobody likes police officers, and that's what Kawaii is getting. That's why she doesn't really like her job. And from Fuji's perspective, is a similar mindset of not really liking dealing with that kind of stuff, but at the same time, from Fuji's perspective, it's all worth it if she can prevent something negative from happening. If she can prevent one travesty, one accident, one misfortune happening to somebody, it makes it all worth it. So you're really getting 2 types of storytelling here. On one end, it is really kind of comedy centered around having a job you hate, and just making fun of how terrible it is to have to deal with a stupid job. And then on the other hand, you're really dealing with more of the grounded slice of life aspects around being a cop, dealing with some actually very heavy subjects that the 2 of them are having to help people with. You have this lady walking down the street and she notices that she doesn't have a sandal on, and it seems as if she's been pushed out of her home. Oh, come to find out, she's dealing with domestic violence. You have this girl who seems like she just kind of, ran away from home and she's going around sleeping with people because she wants money. Oh, we come to find out, she's very terrified of going home with her father. There's obviously a reason, because there's something the father's doing and they have to stop it. So again, even though it is comedy surrounding having a job you hate, there's also this other side of it, which is getting more heavy into what police officers actually deal with on a regular basis. So no, it's no go out and cause disasters and then come back and get yelled at by your chief, but more centered around these 2 kind of balancing aspects that I think does pretty well in balancing the 2 of them. I think it was more of a shock when you go from a scene where it's really kind of cracking a joke about this doofy pamphlet that this Fuji girl hates, that she ends up actually posing perfectly for this pamphlet and how much she hates that. But then on the opposite end, suddenly out of nowhere, you're getting a gut punch because this girl is terrified of going home with her father. It's that kind of stuff, that back and forth, that I think it does pretty good in balancing, but at the same time was kind of shocking. So it gets me down to my bare thoughts on this series. I think when it comes to the comedy, I'm very mixed. There's most cases it didn't really work for me, and I think this kind of goes back into my thoughts on Life Lessons. That was a series that honestly didn't work for me. It worked for a lot of people, but it didn't work for me. And I think a lot of that has to do with because that comedy, the crux of it is a concept of hating what you do and the funniness that comes from hating what you do. And I've never really had that mentality. I've always had a mentality of either ignoring what I do and dealing with it, or just finding something that I do enjoy about it. So it's hard for me to relate to a comedy like that. And I think with Life Lessons especially, it's very relating type of comedy. You have to relate to it to get it. And I think this one plays a little bit on that aspect of hating your job. But it does sprinkle a lot of other things in there that I think is really funny in this one. And I'm sure that Life Lessons does as well. I just didn't finish it. But like I said before, the whole concept of Fuji hating this recruitment pamphlet and how it has this beautiful uniformed lady kneeling down next to this girl and pointing forward, and then sure enough later on when they go to the school, she does the same exact pose, just kind of instinctively, and then she gets super mad about it. This whole idea of them essentially talking about liking what you do because you can prevent tragedies, and then yet have this guy in this car basically spit at them and call them leeches. And then the moment he drives away, they're like, well, looks like he didn't put his seatbelt on before he stormed off. Guess it's time to take his license away. And so they chase him down. It has those moments in there that I think are really, really funny. On the opposite end, with the whole slice of life aspects and really getting into the characters and how they feel about their job and these, again, very heavy subject things they're dealing with that they're trying to stop crime-wise, I think that's where I think I need a bit more time. Like I said before, technically with the girl and her being afraid of her father was a huge gut punch. I hated it. Like seeing her crying her eyes out broke my heart. And again, it felt kind of out of place, but again, that's technically what they're doing here. It's the comedy around their usual life, but then having these moments where they actually have to deal with some serious situations. And I'm curious how that'll play out going forward. You obviously got one of the most upsetting types of crimes in the world already pretty much handled. They did it. What other type of content, what other type of subjects are they going to get into? I'm assuming probably murder at some point, but how they handle that I think is going to be very interesting. Because again, you're technically handling it in the midst of comedy. And sometimes you have to really be careful about how you do that. And there was a few points in this episode already where they did deal with the, I guess, developments of characters, getting into Fuji, the department that she used to be in, this other girl that technically took her position, and how they kind of have a relationship in that department. There's this goofy shtick around essentially everybody in this crime investigation department all having pompadours because they want to look big and tough, and they're not actually big and tough. It was funny kind of seeing that stuff and how Fuji, you kind of get a sense of why she was kicked out of the department as how she treated them. Having Kawaii essentially accept what she does, again, centered around the idea of stopping terrible things from happening, I think will be interesting. Again, I think it's really going to lay in on how they handle those more heavier subjects in the midst of all the comedy. But I'll be interested to see where it goes from here. Again, I'm very mixed back and forth, as you can tell. But I think it's going to take a couple more episodes before I really get a feeling on if this is going to be a solid show or not. But so far, again, it's very much a big mixed bag for me. That's my thoughts on Police in a Pod. If you like this video, hit that like button down below. Comment. Let me know as the first 2 episodes. Are you liking it? Are you going to be checking it out? Let me know. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be covering all the shows of the winter 2022 anime season. I hope you guys will join me for that. And as always, definitely appreciate everybody that supports us through Patreon or through our tips link in the description below. And with that said, y'all take care.